This Polk County Board of Commissioners meeting, July 19th. All commissioners are present. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Extra agendas are on the back table there. And we are going to turn this over to Morgan Smith for psilocybin. Crazy mushrooms.
Good morning, Commissioner. So I'll give you a quick background of kind of what we're going to be talking about today. So Measure 109 was passed in Oregon in 2020. It's currently codified in ORS 475A, because I'm sure you're all going to delve into it in detail later. So the basics of the law is it legalized marijuana, not marijuana, apologies, psilocybin, which is a psychoactive mushroom, essentially, for therapeutic purposes. And so the law is intended to go into effect in January of 2023. It establishes and regulates two general activities, which is the psilocybin service center, which is where treatment is provided by a licensed psilocybin facilitator, and then also, of course, the psilocybin manufacturing to produce the mushrooms for the services. The law itself has some regulations on the service centers and the manufacturing centers, but it's pretty vague at this point. We're currently waiting on administrative rules from OHA to come out. The basic rules for the service centers are just that they cannot be in exclusively residential areas or in a primary residence, and it can't be within 1,000 feet of a school. For the manufacturing process, it's kind of similar. All of this law is similar to the legalization of marijuana from a few years back, but different enough just to be a little bit confusing. So the manufacturing, similar to marijuana, is considered a farm use, and the mushrooms themselves are considered an agricultural product. The one major regulation in the statutory scheme is that it cannot be done outdoors, so it would be essentially produced in enclosed spaces in farmland. You're not permitted to get new dwellings, no farm stands, and no commercial activities in conjunction with the manufacturing. Yeah. Well, the farm
strawberries, and then
the farm stands would be incongruent with the remainder of the law, which is it can only be used under the supervision of a licensed facilitator at a licensed service center. There is one weird little caveat in the law that a service center could be carried on in conjunction with the manufacturing process, and it's unclear how that would work in resource land. And that's something that hopefully will get resolved when the administrative rules come out. So the state, via the Oregon Health Authority, has a rulemaking authority, and a lot of the statutory scheme is just here's the basic ground rules, and you have 2 years OHA to go develop all the regulations for it. So there's a lot of kind of empty spots that we don't understand exactly how the program will be rolled out. However, the law also allows for an opt-out for local jurisdictions. Similar to opting out of marijuana, it requires a referral to the local electors. So what we had, kind of the basic decision in front of the board today that we need some direction on is you have more or less three options. You can do nothing, in which case the way the law operates, we are currently automatically opted into the legal regulated psilocybin market. Or alternatively, we can refer the matter to the voters, which we would schedule probably a hearing in a couple of weeks and develop some ballot language to work with our clerk to get it on the general election. And then if we do intend to pursue the kind of the opt-out and prohibit psilocybin businesses, you can have an automatic sunset clause, which is, I think, pretty common practice, what a lot of other jurisdictions are doing, which is we're going to opt out for about 2 years. That'll allow us to get a better idea of what the market is going to look like, what the regulations are. And then from there, we would have time to implement our own time, place, and manner regulations through our community development office, through zoning and other things. Or alternatively, you can opt out and with an indefinite ban with no endpoint.
is there another alternative to hypothetically take no action, but institute or local ordinances for time, place, and manner in advance of
We could.
before the end of the year?
I think it would be a bit of a heavy lift for Austin's department to get that put in place. And I think it would be difficult to regulate in a vacuum without knowing what the state scheme is going to be. And then the way the law is written, essentially the state laws and regulations have supremacy over any local regulations. So it could be a lot of just chasing our tail. We could enact a whole bunch of local regulations that would be overridden by what the state comes out with anyway. but it is a possibility. And I would defer to Austin on the feasibility of that. The other thing is if you are looking at or more interested in the option of doing nothing and trying to implement some regulations through the remainder of this year, even if we decide, hey, let's schedule a hearing, let's contemplate this a little bit further and see if we want to refer this to the voters. You know, the decision you make today isn't that we're going to send it to the voters for an opt-out right now. It's to have the staff start a process of scheduling a hearing and drafting some language. You'll have to have a second vote at a later date in order to actually do the referral. I'll have to draft an ordinance that gets referred to the voters, that kind of thing. And in that time, we can work closer with community development about the feasibility of trying to implement something this year. I just don't have an answer for it right now. I've had some passing conversations with Mr. McWigan, and he doesn't believe it would be terribly feasible to get those regulations in place.
So I'm clear on this. If we go through this process and put it on the ballot and the voters say, yeah, we said no already, and we say no again, that's, in my mind, like marijuana, still doesn't keep the city jurisdictions from doing what they want.
Correct.
Anyway.
Correct. This would only impact the unincorporated areas of the county.
Right. Including manufacturing completely, as far as you can tell.
Mhm.
So no growing, no matter what, unlike what we have for legalized marijuana, which is governed by the Department of Agriculture. And well, no, that's hemp. Department of the OLCC. So this isn't the same thing in that regard. OHA won't be able to say, well, we can still manage the manufacturing part in spite of you not having not retail, but facilitators outside or inside the county. So this to me takes care of the facilitation, I'm trying to think of the right word here, of administering this drug. But I want to fully understand that it also says we will not have any manufacturing of this on, as you said, resource lands at all.
Yeah, essentially OHA, if we go the opt-out route, OHA will not issue any licenses for any person trying to operate any psilocybin business in an area where it's been prohibited.
And manufacturing so far would be restricted to farmland. Right?
It's largely it's considered a farm use, so it would primarily take place in farmland. Yes.
But you could build a warehouse facility in a city.
Oh, yeah.
And raise.
You just can't.
As long as it's compatible with whatever city regulations they have for it. And there are weird little spots of EFU land in city limits in the county. So
I don't think that really matters.
No, it's
a commercial
outside.
activity. So,
yeah,
but it says no manufacturing products outdoors statute.
yeah. So it has to be enclosed.
It's 65 acres of commercial resource land right up the street here. So as one case in point,
yeah.
I have high confidence there'll be a city jurisdiction or two that are likely to say, yeah, sure.
Dallas, Monmouth, and Independence are exploring right now whether to do the temporary opt-out or not.
Which again, I think makes sense based on the facts like, well, how do you, just the very point you've made about Austin's statement, like, how do you put this together when you don't have all the state elements in place? This is a race to the bottom. So that's my challenge. First and foremost, we're not ready. So I'm having flashbacks of, the whole marijuana card system and the mess that was.
I haven't seen what the legal growing of marijuana has done to the state and the cartels that it's brought in to grow illegal because you can grow legal.
Yeah.
And now that all the pressure is put on our law enforcement in our communities. I want to see some more information on this before.
So you want to have us pursue an opt-out? Is that consensus?
I don't support that, but I'm for a number of reasons. I think there are obviously some details to be worked out on what we're able to do for restrictions in time, place, and manner, but I think we could institute those. I'm not sure why a 6-month time period is too restrictive for our office, but there's a few reasons why I'd like to not take action. The clinical trials are incredibly promising to treat major depressive disorders. 62% of folks went into remission. That's folks that did not respond to traditional pharmaceuticals. I attended the 2 listening sessions and heard from people with major brain injuries, PTSD, addiction, and it's helped a lot of people. And I just worry that should we be one of the counties that don't opt in, we're gonna sort of lose our ability to provide the service for our constituents. And rural access to healthcare, mental health is already a problem. But I understand there are some unknowns, but I just don't. I'm confident we can address those as needed. But I support the will of the board. So.
We're talking about here just the growing of it.
It would be all.
It'd be all-
You're opting out of all of.
Yeah, I think as a practical matter, the service centers is primarily an urban use anyway. Similar to the fact that we have very few marijuana retail sites in unincorporated Polk County because it's just not in a really common use in unincorporated areas of the county. So there is a chance there could be, if we don't opt out of it, there could be some service centers in the county, but probably not a lot. I think we have 1 retail marijuana shop in the whole county.
There'll still be service centers in the cities, in the county.
If depending on what they do.
Yeah, so our decision is just keeping it inside city limits, not allowing in rural areas outside.
We can't determine what happens in city limits, but
Correct.
we would be telling farmers that they cannot
Right.
participate in this market.
Mhm.
I'm not real comfortable with that either, just from a liberty aspect.
So we tell them, well,
Sorry.
but I'll argue with you on that one. We tell them they can't grow canola. That's just one crop of many I can find for you. So
I'm not saying.
there are regulations on crops.
Yeah, I'm
So,
not
sorry.
I'm just saying I don't add this one.
and this one's not as much a crop as it is I guess it's yeah, fungus. Well,
So the decisions that we can make are opt out, that this board decides to opt out and it doesn't go to voters, or we punt it to
If you
voters.
do nothing, you're allowed to automatically.
Right. But if we, the other alternatives are opting, that this board decides to opt out indefinitely or with a time.
All the board can do is refer it to the voters. And
Oh, I
your
see.
options
Okay.
of what you
Thank you.
refer to the voters can be a temporary moratorium with the sunset clause, or it could be outright prohibition. And then also function of the law is while you do have to send it to the voters to get a prohibition, if a prohibition is in place at any point in the future, you as a board can lift that prohibition on your own without going back to the voters.
If we do that, I wouldn't mind putting a shorter time limit than the 2 years. I don't think we need 2 years to, I mean, the rules are gonna be out in December. I don't know if we need 2 years to decide what we want to do.
We hope the rules will be out in December.
Yeah. Well, they're gonna start issuing licenses in January.
as I recall, that is the mandatory sunset,
Yeah, that,
right?
according to the,
I can double check that. I can't remember if that's the mandatory sunset. There was a 2-year period of required rulemaking before the
Oh, okay,
licenses
okay.
were issued. I think most
So
of,
there is no sunset. You're right.
I think the 2 years is just what, as a consensus, most governments have looked at as a
Yeah.
way to get their feet under them and develop their own regulations at a local level.
I mean, here's the bottom line is if we have science and people that are actually performing this, it doesn't matter where, that come to us and say, we have a great track record, we're doing really well, we have systems in place, we don't have any leakage, things are working. Whenever, after, the voters say no, we as a body have the ability, from what I understand, have the ability to say, okay, we're overturning that vote and the ban
Mhm.
and reinstating it.
you mean manufacturers and facilitators outside of Polk County during that period?
Anybody.
Demonstrate.
Again, let's just say, for example, that this could happen. The independents could say, at some point, yeah, we're not going to refer it. And we're going to go ahead and allow it and figure out our own time, place and manner. And somebody from independents that's been doing it for a year or two could come in and say, we want to expand. And, it's entirely possible that we'll have, some case study locally or anywhere here in the valley that'll come and say, hey, we want to expand this. Here's our track record. I'm happy to hear that. I just think that this is too much of a mystery at this point for us to just dive into it and say, yep, sure, let it happen. I think it's appropriate that everybody take their time, let the study work continue, let the federal law catch up, because that's the other thing that's an issue here. Again, when you read some of this stuff, back to the very issues we had on marijuana, which still aren't resolved. There's no Cole memo on this. So there are risks for everybody in this. So there's a lot of challenges to this. And, you know, somehow we had legislators in the state of Oregon said, well, I know better. And I get that there are some really smart people. I think Senator Steiner Hayward is the one who championed this bill. And I trust that she's a smart person and has solid science behind her. And I trust that there are good case studies that are coming forth. I'm very curious about why it's taking so long, given that. But I think it's appropriate for us to listen in this case to the will of the voters, even though it's a tiny little margin in Polk County, and say, let's send it back to them in this case and let them tell us what they want us to do. And, you know, if they don't support it and say, yeah, just let it alone, that's what we're going to do. We're going to figure out time, place, and manner. And apparently we're going to do it in a hurry. So
You just go with OHA's rules and then eventually get your time, place, and manner rules in place.
yeah.
Because you have to react to their rules.
Well, I mean, some of the things that we have to figure out is what does a lux mean in this case? You know, maybe it's just as simple a nothing burger as it is right now for marijuana grow. I mean, it's really turned out to not be much of a document. But the county will have a responsibility in making certain that sites that grow and distribute meet the land use law.
Mhm.
So anyway, so I would move that we instruct staff to pursue next steps towards implementing a ballot title.
I'd second that one. Yeah. Until they come out with the rules and laws in the state, give us guidance and answer some of the questions. I'm not gonna support either.
I'm fairly satisfied with some of the thought processes involved. And again, they've done quite a bit of preliminary work. There's a lot of research on this, and I don't want our folks in Polk County to miss the boat on this opportunity. Both our people who need the service and people who would like to get into the business or expand their business. So I'll probably won't support it, but I do support the will of the board.
Need to vote on this?
Might as well.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes. Next up, non-listed items on this agenda. It's been a pretty raucous conversation. All right, are you gonna let it die this quick? All right. With that, meeting adjourned. That was on the